Alright, so we're back, of course, talking about some Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. We're talking summons. So in a previous video, we did the pre-order discussion when it comes to Rebirth. And we talked about the possibility of them adding more summons, either as like a pre-order bonus or like a deluxe edition sort of thing, or just maybe just in general, them adding new summons to the FF7 compilation. And I figured we'd kind of do a video about that, kind of talking about some summons that I wouldn't mind seeing in the Remake trilogy that have never actually been a part of Final Fantasy VII. Now, when it came to the original Final Fantasy VII, there's already quite a bit of summons. There was 16 in the original FF7. Remake itself gave us 6, which were all from the original Final Fantasy VII in some way or another. 7 if you include Rama, and then obviously we have the DLC summons, which weren't from the original FF7. They're all technically new. So if we cross out the summons that we already have with the Remake project, that leaves us with, of course, 10 left that we've yet to see. And with the Remake project, if we're just looking at the summons from the original FF7, we've seen 7, right? They split apart Chocomog into Fat Chocobo and Chocobo Moogle for Remake, but it was two different things. It was 2 different summons in the same summon material with the original FF7. But at least with 10 that we've yet to see. So going into Rebirth, we can expect maybe for there to also be 6 to 7 summons introduced. Now, obviously, Remake gave us summons where there weren't any, because in the original FF7, there weren't summons in the Midgar segment. But if we want to look at, like, the order that we can obtain summons based on the original Final Fantasy VII, the ones we don't already have with the Remake project, it would be Titan, Odin, Kujata, Alexander, Neo Bahamut, and then Phoenix and Hades kind of together, because that's all sort of a part of the huge materia questline. Now, when it came to the original Final Fantasy VII, we received the Titan materia in the destroyed Gungaga reactor. That's obviously not going to happen in terms of our location for our first summon material. That's going to be too far into the story, right? We still got to do Calm Flashback and then moving on to Junon, Cargo Ship, all that other stuff. We got to go through all the Gold Saucer shit until we can inevitably get to Gungaga. So we're going to get summons before then. Now, with the original FF7, you received your first summon materia at the Chocobo Farm. The next one was Shiva in like Lower Junon. And then you got the Ifrit materia on the Cargo Ship. Those are the first like couple of summons. So I expect us to get our first summon within Rebirth, anywhere from like the Cargo Ship back. Now, this all, of course, is assuming that we're doing shit in order. We know there's going to be stuff done out of order. But anywhere from like Cargo Ship back. So Cargo Ship, Junon, Mithril Mine, all that other stuff. I expect there to be a summon somewhere in that shit. I don't know what. Mithril Mine's kind of a decent guess just because we know it's going to be, as we've seen from the trailer, what appears to be Mithril Mine, kind of expanded, has its own boss and stuff like that. It's going to be a little bit into the game, similar to what happened with Remake, right? We didn't get our first summon materia until like chapter 3 to 4 when Jessie gives us the Ifrit materia for helping her, right? Or to help her. So I kind of expect a similar thing as of right now. Now, what the summon would be, I don't know. Titan is one that kind of makes sense since it's like, not even just because it's like the first one we should get based on OG FF7 that we don't have yet. But it's kind of like an early kind of whatever summon. I don't even know what enemies are weak to like Earth off the top of my head in the original Final Fantasy VII. Also, there's not an Earth element right now when it comes to Final Fantasy VII Remake, so I don't even know if there's going to be an Earth element going into the second game. So they might make him like a non-elemental, which would be kind of disappointing, but maybe. Also, going into Rebirth, I kind of hope that the majority of the summon materials we get in the game are found in the world and not tied to Chadley. I want Chadley to be there. I like the VR missions. I don't mind us doing the VR missions and him like crafting like good materia for us. And you can have like 1 or 2 like VR summon fights if you want to. But now that we're actually like, out there exploring the world and traveling the planet, I kind of just want to come across them. It makes it like more special when you're like going through like this dark cave, this ancient ruin or some shit, and you come across this like powerful materia that's been sitting there for decades or hundreds of thousands of years, whatever the fuck, right? Let's get on to like the subject matter of the video, like some brand new summons that I want in the FF7 Remake trilogy that have never been in Final Fantasy VII. The first one I think is kind of the most important and makes the most sense out of all these, and it's Fenrir. Fenrir, however you might actually say it, I don't know the exact pronunciation. But when it came to like Advent Children, Cloud developed this lone wolf motif based on Fenrir. There's an actual wolf in the movie that you see a couple of times. He wears the Fenrir like emblem on his left shoulder, and he also named his bike Fenrir, right? Or it's called Fenrir. I don't know if Cloud actually named it himself. And actually, even beyond that, like I think with Advent Children Complete, you can see like the background of Cloud's phone is Fenrir, and like Barrett, Tifa, and Cloud all have like rings with Fenrir on it. So it's like a big thing in Advent Children, right? And for Cloud to like model himself after this like maybe like mythological wolf, I guess, that easily exists in the world. There needs to be this like already established like lore for Fenrir for Cloud to want to have to model himself after it. And we see within Advent Children, like Fenrir seems to be like a legit tangible thing. We see it away from Cloud, right? We see it with like the Buster Sword and stuff like that in the movies. So it seems like it does kind of exist in the world, and it was a summon in previous other Final Fantasies. I think they could do a summon. I think you could do a Fenrir summon. It would make sense that like, okay, this is FF7, right? Advent Children's not till years down the road. And if we have a summon for Fenrir within like the remake project at some point, it makes sense like, oh, this is how Cloud kind of learned about Fenrir and then wanted to model himself after it later on. More so than just giving us an explanation for where Cloud got the Fenrir thing from, I'd say there to be lore for the summons, which Remake is kind of giving us when you like assess the summons. It gives you a little bit of backstory for what they maybe like did thousands of years ago or whatever. So I think it makes a lot of sense that within the world of Gaia, there's this mythology of this ancient, powerful wolf or some shit, and we actually can find the material for it. And again, Cloud eventually modeled himself after that. To kind of further try to add some like lore and possibilities to Fenrir as like a summon in this world, it can be like a local legend, right? Cloud grew up in Nibelheim, and one of the enemies that you can fight in like the Nibel area is the Nibel wolf. There's actually a wolf enemy in the area outside of Nibelheim, right? So maybe it's like a local legend. It's like this local legend. Maybe there's like a mythological wolf or some shit that is maybe in the mountains, or maybe just outside of Nibelheim somewhere, potentially, and that's where Cloud initially got the idea for Fenrir to eventually adopt and have children. And given that Fenrir's already a summon in other Final Fantasy games, it's kind of weird that we haven't had that in Final Fantasy VII yet. Now, Fenrir is not a very popular summon, so to speak. It's only in a couple games. It's in like 6, 9, 11, 14, and spoiler warning, pause for effect, Final Fantasy 16. So it's not like a super popular summon, but it's kind of the equivalent if like in Advent Children Cloud modeled himself after like Ifrit, but then there's no Ifrit summon somehow within the Final Fantasy 7 compilation. Just kind of weird, right? So I just think there kind of needs to be a summon. Now moving beyond this one because it makes the most sense, it's kind of hard to speculate just because like pretty much all the actual like iconic summons in Final Fantasy are already in Final Fantasy VII, right? Like Shiva, Ifrit, Rama, Bahamut, things like that, right? And we got multiple Bahamuts in FF7. So it's kind of just goes into like summons that I would just want to see or like to see, a little biased that I'd want to see them. And first it would be kind of almost any summon from Final Fantasy X that was unique to 10. See, when it comes to this channel, we do a lot of discussions on the Final Fantasy VII and 10 connection theory that is really more than just a theory, and it's more than just Easter eggs with how much stuff there is, especially when they put like the Albed character in like the President Shinra Museum, and you have like the actual Shinra Albed little kid from 10-2 on like the front of like magazines in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Stuff like that, but also just the way the worlds work and operate. The whole, if you watch the videos, you know. I think it makes sense that you could put a summon from Final Fantasy X into the game. Now, which one would that be? I'm a big fan of Anima. In fact, Anima is my favorite summon of all time within the Final Fantasy franchise. And when I first seen this cutscene with my initial playthrough of Final Fantasy X, seeing Seymour summon this demonic monster, essentially, that comes out and starts bodying all the other monsters in the area, and like the nice little touch of blood coming from the eye at the end, it changed my life. I'm just like, this is the coolest fucking summon I've ever seen. At that point, I already played like a couple of Final Fantasy games, and Anima was still the coolest summon. Even to this day, it is my favorite summon, and that'll probably never change. It makes sense for a Final Fantasy X summon to be within the FF7 world. Not really, because the summons kind of go away at the end of Final Fantasy X, right? But nothing's dead forever, because Tidus comes back at the end of 10 too. And the theory from Nojima states that like little kid Shinra's descendants would travel to Gaia, 1,000 years in the future or some shit. So maybe it's possible they brought over like one of the summons, like somehow, like the fucking Fireflies, or they brought one of like the spheres and it has the Fireflies in it and can essentially becomes a materia within the world of Gaia, something along those lines. Now, let's just say for hypothetical sake here that it does exist within the remake world. Whenever you assess it, it could just simply say something along the lines of this ancient being, this powerful being from another world, or something like that. I don't know the full like sentence or two that they would give it on the assess menu, but yeah, just could simply say that state that it is a being from another planet, essentially. Other unique summons at 10 are Ixion, Yojimbo, and the Magus Sisters. Now, the Magus Sisters are in like Final Fantasy IV, but I think they're just a boss fight. They weren't an actual summon you could use, right? I think they first appeared as a summon with Final Fantasy X. You can do any of those as well with 10. I'm not necessarily attached to any of them. Like, I like them because I'm a Final Fantasy X fan, but it's not like I'm a big Magus Sisters fan. They're strong as shit in the game, but I just don't really care. I'd much rather it be Anima if there's going to be any of them. Other summons that I really enjoy are the ones from the Ivalice world, and particularly Adramelech, or Adramelech, I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced, and Famfrit. Something about those two I've always enjoyed ever since like Tactics and Tactics Advance. I think Famfrit originated in Tactics Advance. Adramelech's in the original Tactics. But that's where I first seen them was Tactics Advance. I don't know if I ever seen Adramelech in the first Tactics game. And then Final Fantasy 12 has them as summons. And like being one of my like favorite Final Fantasy games, and I just always use Famfrit and Adramelech on one of my main characters, whatever my main party might be. And it just so happens also that Adramelech is modeled after Capricorn, which I happen to be. Like, I was a fan of that before I ever even knew they're supposed to be like Zodiac shit back in the day. I always liked the design of Adramelech. So I really like the design of Fanford as well, too. So you could do either one of those if you wanted to. They're just ones that I like. I don't expect them ever to be in FF7. Another good honorable mention for me is Diablos. I think the design is fucking sick. I mean, it's a generic kind of like devil sort of thing, winged devil. But it looks pretty cool. And I still remember the first time I use the lamp whenever Sid gives it to you, like standing outside the school or whatever in Blom Garden, and like going into my inventory and looking at the lamp and activating it and having to fight this thing and it beating the shit out of me. This one's sort of off topic, but it somewhat has to do with summons. But I've seen people talk about Gilgamesh potentially being in the remake project, which I would absolutely love, because Gilgamesh is in most of the numbered entries, but he's not in 7. And it actually works, you know, speaking of summons, because he's actually a guardian force in Final Fantasy VIII. If you have Odin when you go to fight Cypher at the Lunatic Pandora, he kills Odin, and then Odin gets replaced with Gilgamesh, which is pretty cool. But also, going back to 12, which we just recently talked about, you fight Gilgamesh in Final Fantasy 12, and he has a bunch of different iconic weapons, one of them being the Buster Sword. Now, it's a replica, it's a fake, it's not the actual Buster Sword. But the fact that Gilgamesh has that would at least insinuate that he's traveled to Gaia. He's traveled to the Final Fantasy world, universe, whatever, and like the Buster Sword, and I guess made a fake of it or something. And admittedly, I'm not like the lore master when it comes to the Final Fantasy franchise, but I believe Gilgamesh is meant to be, or at least implied to be, the same Gilgamesh in like every game he appears, like from Final Fantasy V onwards, which is like the one. He's kind of the one thing that kind of connects all the games together, even though they're meant to not be, and they're meant to be in like different universes and all that other stuff. But Gilgamesh traveling to like different universes, dimensions, or whatever, like he's one thing that kind of connects them. And the fact that he has a Buster Sword, I mean, again, he had to have visited Gaia at some point. That'll more or less wrap up the video, my dudes. So, pass off to you guys. What are your thoughts on some summons that aren't already in Final Fantasy VII that you would like to see? Whether that's iconic summons or just summons you like or expect to see. I actually put this out on Twitter, and as I've been recording, people have like kind of replied to the tweet. And it's actually somebody that's already mentioned Finra, which is like perfect. So some other people have the same idea too. And again, it just makes sense. I think out of all the stuff we talked about in this video, Finra's, I wouldn't say like a slam dunk, but I would not be surprised if we get a Finra summon sometime in the Remake trilogy. This is, of course, the video, my dudes. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @davidYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Low Gain, or leave it like Cobain.